Hi, everyone. Well, a few weeks ago, news came out that six pro life activists were convicted of violating legislation called the FACE Act, signed into law in 1994 by President Clinton. The law's aim was to intimidate and bring prosecution against the frontline forces of the pro life community. Now, their guilt or innocence is for you to decide. My purpose here is of a different sort. As I read through an article about the incident and subsequent trial, the Lord began to speak to me. He showed me that because we are in a new season where the enemy has become much more aggressive in his attacks, we as believers need to be cautious where we step and not hastily charge into battle. Instead, as it says in Ephesians 5, see then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be unwise, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Then I heard the Lord say this.
When soldiers are conscripted to fight in a war, it is to a higher authority their lives are then submitted. Thus is it at the behest of their commanding officer that each soldier serves, strictly adhering to the orders he has issued, as he is the one privy to the broader scope of their mission's objectives. So then, just as it is with those who serve in the militaries of man, where there is a chain of command that is strictly followed in order to see victory accomplished, so too is it in my army, except it is I alone who hold the rank of commanding officer. Therefore, it is to my specific directives that the ranks of my army must adhere. And since the enemy's entire battle plan lies plain before me, I know precisely where, when, and how my soldiers should strike each stronghold he has erected. Then, along the battlefront, in the fight to save the preborn, there are specific strategies which must right now be employed as the enemy's tactics have become increasingly more aggressive. Thus, my soldiers cannot employ the same strategies utilized in the recent past to combat this evil in their nation, for indeed have the battle lines known a significant shift, and therefore none who line my ranks should be found running headlong into battle, as indeed has the ground of this particular front become increasingly more treacherous. See then, is not the enemy ready to ambush any of my soldiers who physically challenge the terrain still bound to his authority? For indeed was he given the legal permission by this people to do so when they gave their assent to have that man named Clinton as their president, when he aided the enemy's cause, which is in part to not only demonize but also criminalize the actions of those who are actively engaged in the fight for life. So though the enemy has lost a great deal of his authority in this nation regarding abortion when my hand toppled over Roe v. Wade, still does he maintain a solid foothold, as that federal law which was enacted a few decades ago was just the loophole he needed to keep from fully losing his dominion in that arena. For surely has he virtually stood unopposed along this front of the abortion battle, as the majority of soldiers who currently line my ranks had either forgotten or were unaware of that law's existence, that act which is referred to as FACE. And while in the recent days this enemy's stronghold has become widely known, still none of my soldiers should be found charging into battle against it, thus assuming they already possess the needed strategy to see the enemy once again defeated. Then, like a weed, it is the very root of this law that must be extracted, so that the federal government's power is nullified, and thereby preventing its interference in the affairs of each state. Then, unless specifically instructed to do otherwise, the warfare of my soldiers is to be aimed at their nation's capital, for it is within this ground that the enemy is actually entrenched, and as such, it is where an aggressive campaign should be launched, so that the enemy's ability to hold nationwide influence on the matter of abortion is completely nullified. Therefore, let those who are mine avoid situating themselves as easy targets, for the enemy is looking for any opportunity to level an attack against you.
I then heard these verses from Matthew 10. Behold, I'm sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. Then the Lord continued,
Thus am I issuing this directive to my own. Do not physically venture into his terrain, for to have your prayers be effectual against him, you needn't be in literal close proximity to his position. Though at times I do ask my children to openly challenge enemy occupied ground by contending on the actual soil he is holding. In this case, however, the efforts of my ranks would be better spent by taking a more subtle approach, one that the enemy shall not see coming.
The Lord then showed me abortion clinics across America. However, the spaces where sidewalk counselors and those praying outside the clinics had been positioned were now vacant because the Lord had issued new orders and strategies and had reassigned these soldiers to a new tactical position. And I heard the Lord say,
Thus are my own to remain positioned right where they are and not physically advance upon an enemy position unless given the order from high command, as new strategies must be employed in this season to combat the evils of abortion still happening upon America's shores. So then let those who line my ranks stand as if well-trained archers, aiming their sights upon Washington, D.C., at the very house where the FACE Act was initially enacted, sending a volley of prayers towards this target, and thereby asking me to take action. Repeal, repeal, repeal. Let this be your heart's cry. For though this enemy's stronghold has been fully made known, still it shall not be completely dismantled without the intervention of my hand. And like the steady beat of a drum, let your prayers be uttered, entreating me again and again to act. For surely then will I come and move on your behalf.